today's program deals with the subject of pornography. Not something I talk about a lot, but it does need to be addressed because it's playing a very important role in our culture, and I believe one of the reasons that we're declining as rapidly as we are. A lot of people think it's no big deal. It's become very commonplace. People talk about it. A lot of people don't even feel guilty about it. I mean, everybody's doing it, so what's the big deal? What harm can it do, right? Today's program is on that very subject. What harm can it do? Hopefully, if you watch it, you'll get a better understanding as to why there is cause for alarm. Today, I had one of my patients come in, and she was talking about, after discussing herself, at the end, she said, Dr. Guy, there's one more thing I'd like to talk about. If you have a couple extra minutes, it's been bothering me. So I said, okay, what do you got? Well, she was concerned because two of her grandchildren, ages 11 and 12, were caught for the second time having sex with each other. And this time, the family decided to split them up so that the brother now lives with a different family member. Anyway, the grandmother was under the impression that the reason that this occurred was because the children must have been molested by one of mom's many boyfriends. How would they have known about that stuff? They had to have been molested at some time, and an adult had to have taught them. My response to that was not really. Today, children are exposed to pornography at a pretty young age. Unless parents put filters on cell phones and on computers, once they go to school, they very quickly figure out how to access pornographic websites. And children's first exposure to sex is through pornography today, for most children. Okay, they don't have to have been molested in order to emulate that behavior. They could have easily seen it on a phone or a tablet or a computer, or even at school on somebody else's device, okay? So, although molestation does occur and is very common, this relationship could very well be a product of pornographic exposure. Anyway, I hope you get something out of today's program. I hope that maybe if it doesn't help you, you can use the information to perhaps help a family member avoid a fate that might otherwise be very unfortunate. Okay? Enjoy the program.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. I think most of us have arrived. There might be a few other people trickling in. But we have a lot of important information to cover today, so we don't want to delay in getting started. My name is Dr. LaTanya Carter. I'm the Director of Pastoral Care Services here in Perspective Detroit. And approximately twice a year, we do an open house event like this for pastors and their staff in the area with the purpose of kind of creating a bridge between what we do in the psychology world and what you do in the religious community. Since its inception more than 30 years ago, Perspectives has been a Christian organization. It is the foundation on which we stand. We very much have a Christian worldview. And so it's important to us that pastors and spiritual leaders in the community are well equipped to deal with some of the mental health issues that they may have or be a witness to in their churches and their congregations. And so this is just a free service that we like to offer to people in the area so that you guys have more information and more tools to work with. So some of you have been here before, others of you are new to us, so we welcome all of you here today. We have 4 amazing speakers that you're going to hear today. They're all natives here of Perspectives. They're excellent therapists, and they're each going to give you a little bit of a different perspective or aspect of pornography and sexual addiction and how it affects us in the church community. Our first speaker is Dr. William Guy. He's our psychiatrist here. And to say that he's a psychiatrist is really just to understate what he really is. He's kind of our go-to for all things related to the brain and behavior. He's an author, he's a speaker, he's appeared on numerous radio programs and television programs. He's also the medical director of Dearborn Pastoral Counseling Center, and also works at Easter Seals and Botsford Hospital. So he's well educated, well experienced, and really a great source of information on this important topic.
All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm glad you could make it today. This is a pretty unusual topic that we don't discuss a lot in church settings. It, however, has become very, very important, very important. When Tamara asked for she wanted to see my slides so she could put it on this machine over there, and after I gave them to her, she asked, "Do you have any videos?" And I thought to myself, for this particular topic, probably not a good idea. All right, we're going to talk about the pernicious nature of pornography, and start off by asking the question, why did God invent sex? Because everyone will agree, Christian and non-believer alike, as long as you believe in God, everyone will say, well, that goes back to God. Okay, yeah. Why? Well, the obvious answer is procreation. Everybody gets that right. However, not only does it involve procreation, it also involves communication. Sex is a form of communication. What does it say? One of the things that it says is that I really love you. Okay? When used outside of that context, it's a form of deception. Right? Now, not only is sex a form of communication, in order for sex to be fulfilling, it needs to involve communication. In other words, what the couple communicates before they get in bed, in terms of if there is unwashed linen, if there are bags that haven't been unpacked, if there's not laundry that hasn't been cleaned between the couple through communication, then it diminishes the sexual experience. Anybody who does sex therapy or counseling with couples knows that. Okay? So sex is not only a form of communication, it is dependent on good communication between the husband and wife. Pernicious means injurious in some way, having a harmful effect. But when we use the term pernicious, we mean that the harm is in a gradual fashion. It's gradual and subtle, like pernicious anemia. It sneaks up on you. As that red count gets lower and lower, you get weaker and weaker over time. Pornography, I'm describing as pernicious because it doesn't destroy your life immediately. It's something that the more it's consumed, the more damage is done to the subject. A few years ago, I had a couple, and I don't normally do a lot of couples therapy, but sometimes, like, I can't not do it because they come in together whether I want them to or not. You know, they show up and here comes the other one, and then they fight in front of me like I'm the parent. Seriously, I can't tell you how many times people come into my office and fight with each other and expect me to be the referee. I didn't sign up for that, okay? That's not what I'm here, but they do. And the fight they were having was he was looking at porn before they got married, and he continued to have it into the marriage. And she felt that was a form of cheating. She was very offended by this. And they could not agree on this. And we're going to talk about that today, about, you know, because his point was, it's like I'm not having an affair. You're being paranoid. I'm not having an affair. You should be happy that I'm not out having an affair, right? Well, she didn't see it that way, and there was a reason for the conflict, and we're going to get into this as I go further. Back when I was in college and a kid, if you wanted to look at pornography, it was basically available in dirty magazines. If one of the neighborhood kids found one and everyone would share, oh, look what we found. Or for the videos, you had to go in those seedy adult bookstores in the bad part of town and park your car so everyone will know you're in there, woo. And so as you drove by, you know, the guys would think, oh, I wonder what's in there. But I'm not parking there because I'm not having anybody see me go in a place like that, right? It was done, you had to go somewhere to see the really explicit stuff. Well, that has changed tremendously. Initially, since people learned to draw, there has been pornography. Okay, you go back, you look at cave, look at places like Pompeii. Well, Pompeii was very advanced in terms of the porn that they had there, but even before that, you look at some of the figurines from ancient cultures, and they're clay modeling pornography, kind of naked women. And then with the invention of photography, pornography achieved another level of sophistication. So just immediately after the invention of the camera, you have the invention of pornography right there. Okay, now. Television came around, and cable TV, boom, and you had cable television pornography, okay? And now that has progressed to where it's not just on, now the cable TV pornography is like real pornography, and it's like before it was encoded, so you had to subscribe. Now it comes at you whether you want it or not. You have to pay to not see this stuff. Now, it's also, as computer technology has improved, we've got it on cell phones, it's on computers, and again, if you don't want it on your cell phone or your computer, you have to pay to not have it. It's that pervasive. Now, where are we going? Well, we're already with virtual reality. Right now, most people's home virtual reality systems are about 2K, so you can see the dots and pixelations, but it's still there, it's 3D, it's immersive. We're going to 8K. It's already here, by the way. It's not out to consumers yet, but once you reach 8K virtual reality, that's the same resolution as me looking at you right now. So the realism goes up that far. We've had sex dolls for a while. Japan, they sell a ton of those things, and they're like giving up on the women, and you've got so much sex doll thing. We've got robotic sex dolls that are in development and are there as well. So if you combine 8K virtual reality and robotic sex dolls, you have a full-on immersion experience. So pornography becomes almost indistinguishable from the actual thing, from actual sex. Okay? So this is why this problem isn't going away. Technology is fueling more and more explicit sexual experiences that don't involve husband and wife. More than 1 in 8 web searches are for erotic material. 67% of children admit to clearing their internet history browsing. Okay? 79% of accidental exposures to internet pornography happen in the home. 56% of divorce cases involve at least one party addicted to pornography, usually the man. Now you think, whoa, we're safe because we're in the church. We have protection against this kind of nonsense, all right? We're the light of the world, the salt of the earth. Well, we have problems too, even though we have Bible verses. Colossians 3:5. So put to death the sinful earthly things lurking within you, have nothing to do with sexual sin, impurity, lust, and shameful desires. 2 Timothy 2:22. Run away from anything that stimulates youthful lust. If we trust that the Bible is the Word of God, then we don't have to ask the question, is looking at pornography okay or not? Well, no, probably not. Bible is kind of clear that that sort of thing is not okay. All right? Now, is it the same as adultery? No. Whenever you involve yourself with another person, that does take it to another level because you bring somebody else into your sin. And that's not a good thing, obviously. But it's still not exactly right. Charles Spurgeon said, "Look at the cross and hate your sin, for sin nailed your well-beloved to the tree. Look up to the cross and you will kill sin, for the strength of Jesus' love will make you strong to put down your tendencies to sin." All right. Spiritual maturity progresses as we increasingly obey God. The more we do what He tells us, the more mature we become, the more we grow into the image that the Lord had in mind for us. Anytime, there are two things that keep Christians from maturing. One is bad habits, addictions, and pornography is probably number one in the West, okay? Addictions is number one. So substances, pornography, other forms of sex and so forth, that addiction. Number two is unwillingness to forgive. Those things keep people immature more than anything. And until we get through those hurdles and start making progress in those areas, we don't mature beyond that. And so when we're focused on Christ and He's helping us to overcome those things, then the potency of those addictions become less and less. But if we're stuck, if we are telling ourselves, it's okay, it's not that bad, and continue on, we don't grow. Our eyes are not on him. Our eyes are elsewhere. Now, how bad is pornography in the church? 57% of pastors interviewed said that this was the #1 problem in their churches as far as they were concerned. That this was the biggest reason the congregation's not growing. 26% of, if you person identifies themselves as a regular churchgoer, they are 26% less likely to admit to looking at pornography. However, 91%, if a person identified themselves as fundamentalist, they were 91% more likely to admit to porn addiction. And I'm going, whoa, what in the world's going on there? I'm going to come back to that one. Okay, of 1,351 pastors surveyed, 54% said that they had looked at pornography within the last year. 34% of women interviewed by Today's Christian Women in an online interview said that 34% of women were looking at it. And of Christian men and women, 50% of men and 20% of women said they had a pornography addiction. So this is again, this is among Christian audiences. So it's pretty bad. Now, I'm going to go back to this one here, the fundamentalist. Why in the world? Because that one popped out at me. It's like, what? Fundamentalist? Doesn't that mean you take the Bible literally, seriously? You take it like this is God's word? So why would that give you more of a pornography issue? Well, there are several things I could think of. One, blatant hypocrisy. Just because just because you go to a fundamentalist church doesn't make you truly fundamentalist. Do you really believe in the fundamentals of the Bible? Okay, just like when you walk into your garage, do you turn into a car? No, I mean, sometimes you do this, you go places for other people and you don't really believe it. So, blatant hypocrisy. The values come from the world, but, you say you're a Christian. I get that, okay? The rationalization, I've got a ticket to sin. Jesus died for all my sins. I'm not going to hell for this, so I can do what I want, and it is forgiven, okay? So, hey, at least I'm not having an affair. Again, rationalization. Are fundamentalists more likely to tell the truth? Some people might, some people when you say, do you have a problem with this? They say no because they think no is the right answer. But if you believe the Bible is serious, if you take it seriously, you don't want to lie. And so maybe they're just telling the truth. And that's why they were 91% more likely to admit to having an addiction problem. Now, what about, are fundamentalists more likely to be sexually repressed because of limitations in selecting a mate? Out in the world, when you select a mate, do I like the way you look? Cool. We're good. That's all I need to know. Oh, you like YouTube too? Awesome. We have so much in common. Let's get together. Whereas if you're a Christian, you got to go through a whole other list. Are they confess Christians? They go to church. They study the Bible. They're non-divorce. Don't smoke, drink, cuss, or chew, or keep company with those that do. Okay, I mean, look at that list. And so it narrows down the possibilities. And so maybe they're just mateless, and that's the reason. So who knows? I mean, there could be a number of reasons. The bottom line is that for whatever reason, when believers engage in using pornography, it results in guilt and shame. And if it doesn't, then I think they have another problem, okay? Because it does, though. And for most people, it does. It results in guilt and shame. And that affects their view of God even. If you see God as angry at you all the time, you're really missing out. And Jesus said, I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. All right? He said might, because most believers aren't really experiencing that full experience. I mean, they're going to be forgiven. They're going to make it to heaven a lot by the skin of their teeth, but they're not really experiencing fullness, the fullness that he intended. Okay, and this is one of those things that stops that, because while they're on earth, they see God as always looking down, shaking his head, going, oh, again, geez, man, all right. And when you see God like that all the time, it's hard to be positive about your life, okay? And Satan wins. So, shame for believers, but no consequences for non-believers. I mean, they're just whooping it up. They're talking about it. They're sharing videos at work. At work. Do you know how many Christians that I have counseled that have been fired because they tried to turn people in for looking at pornography at work, and they got fired for it? Okay? This is like the norm. So they're getting away with it, right? No. They're not getting away with it. Pornography has consequences. It has a pernicious negative effect, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. In her book, Pornified, Pamela Paul makes some interesting observations. Just going to read a few of them. Men use pornography in secret, and especially with internet pornography. They tend to spend hours each week using it. Pornography changes men's expectations of how their female partners should look and behave, and thus hurts their relationships. I bolded that one because I'm going to spend a lot of time explaining exactly what I mean by that and how it's damaging relationships. And then children and young people are starting to learn about sex from pornography, and that is altering what their view of normal sex is. So when these kids grow up looking at this stuff, they carry that into adulthood and these expectations of what sex is and what it should involve, and it's a nuclear bomb to relationships. All right. Now I'm just gonna, one thing that I will say here is, this is part of a different talk, but I think it's a very important thing to keep in mind. The young generation today is in so much trouble, and it's been as our culture has changed so dramatically since the 60s in a negative way. People are now dying sooner instead of the lifespan going up and up with each generation. It's like we fell off a roller coaster. People are dying quicker. Suicide is the #2 cause of death for people under 18 now. If you take a look at people ages 60 and up, the likelihood that they would be diagnosed with a major mental illness like depression or anxiety was 1 in 25. For people between 40 and 60, it's about 1 in 18. Do you know what it is for people between the ages of 18 and 29 right now? 50%, okay? And people under 18, I guarantee you that number is well above 50%. So how are we going to run a country with over half of the population with major psychiatric disturbances? Now, pornography is playing a role because it's helping to destroy couples' relationships. All right? Naomi Wolf said, feminists were wrong in their assumption that pornography would turn men into raving sexual beasts bent on all forms of sexual mayhem. Instead, over the years, the pervasiveness of pornography has rendered men less sexually responsive to real women. All right? A lot of people thought that if people would just look at more pornography, there'd be more sex. In Europe, there were several countries whose populations were declining so bad that the government literally recommended that people watch pornography, thinking that that would cause the population to go back up. Doesn't work that way. It actually has the opposite effect. For most of human history, erotic images have been reflections of, or celebrations of, or substitutes for real naked women. For the first time in human history, the image's power and allure have supplanted that of real naked women. Today, real naked women are just bad porn. Okay? And again, the whole latter half of my presentation is on the mechanism. How does this happen? Why do men prefer porn to their spouses? We're going to get into that. If you want to look at a single sentence explanation, hundreds of hours of pornography exposure can have effect on expectations. And as a result, real women become disappointing and boring. How do you monitor disappointment? Well, what do you expect? If I expect my paycheck to say $1,500 and I get a paycheck for $500, how disappointed am I? I'm $1,000 disappointed, okay? That's how you measure. So what do you expect? What did you get? The difference is how disappointed you are. And pornography is presenting something that no human will ever achieve. For one thing, it's fake. Everything you're looking at is fake, fake, fake. Those people don't love each other. Those people are both usually very high when they did it because they don't want to remember what they're doing. I've got patients who've been in this industry, okay? They're some of the most jaded, negative people you can meet. If you were in the room 5 minutes with them, you'd want to leave, okay? Character-wise, they have major issues. These people have usually been significantly abused as children, and internally they've got personality disorders and substance abuse problems, and there's all kinds of issues. And once their youth is expended off to either a short life because of their drugs, or they end up miserable alone. And, you know, I mean, it's really a very sad life. It really is. And what people are looking at in their head, you know, where people are just, oh, they both love sex so much and they're having such a great time, it's fake. And plus, they've been photoshopped too. I mean, all of these things. These are not real people. The image you have in your mind can never approach, there will never be a reality that will match that. As a result, the spouse has no chance. And I'm speaking of both men and women, because women have problems with porn as well. And so the problem is that when the partner that's using pornography compares their partner to their experiences, that partner's always going to fall short. So people get married, they have expectations. Oh, she's going to meet my needs and I'll be fulfilled and happy and it's going to be happily ever after and all my problems are going to be solved and I'm going to be made complete by her. And she's thinking the same thing about him. I hear the laughter, yes. And then you get married and the reality sets in. Guess what? Ooh, yeah, you understand that verse over there in Genesis, I will create the woman to oppose him. Because that's literally what it says. And you realize you're being opposed, and she's being opposed. And in order to get through all this opposition, y'all got to talk and work through things. And you got to discover that you have a lot of rough edges. And yes, you can complete each other, but it's a painful process. And you have to be brave to confront those things that bother you, and you have to be tactful. Okay, and there's a lot of work involved in building a good relationship. A lot of communication. People that don't communicate don't last. Okay, so these are, you know, this isn't what you expect, and there's a lot of baggage, a lot of difficulty that goes with it. Now, in Willard Harley's book, His Needs, Her Needs, I refer people to that a lot. When I see that marital conflict is contributing to the problem, I love this series, and so I have a little video, the book, the audio book series. I think it's wonderful. Any couple can benefit from it. But he discusses 10 things that both men and women, these are the top 10 things that men and women want in their relationship with their spouse. Affection, sexual fulfillment, conversation, recreational companionship, honesty and openness, physical attractiveness, financial support, domestic support, family commitment, and admiration. And I'm not here to do that whole talk, but these are the top 10 things that people list on their thing. Men and women are different though. In utero, there are changes that occur that make the male brain different from the female brain. All right? As a result, men and women have 5 different things on their top list, okay? So the top 5 for women are affectionate displays, conversation, honesty and openness, financial support, and family commitment. Men have sexual fulfillment as number 1, recreational companionship, attractive spouse, domestic support, and admiration as their top 5. So they are the opposite top 5. They don't agree on the top 5. Anybody have a cat? You ever have a cat bring a mouse to you? All right? My cat did that one time. You know, I found a mouse in the basement, brought it to my bedroom. It was still alive, okay? All right? Now, he was saying, I love you, master. You know, I love you so much. If you want to give me a gift, this is what I would like. All right? And so I'm giving it to you because, you know, I'm sure you feel the same way, right? That's the problem in relationships, is that we tend to give the things on our top 5 to our spouse, thinking that it's going to make them as happy as it would make us, and it doesn't work. And so marriage involves the work of realizing what men need and what women need and giving them what they need and want rather than what we would like. Okay, so there's some communication and compromise involved. Now, if that is done, when you do that, when you give your spouse what they really need and want, it contributes to something that Hurley calls the love bank. The love bank. And so all those, every time you do a happy, every time you do something and give something that the spouse wants or needs, their affection for you goes up. That's called the love bank. Now, conversely, whenever we do something that disappoints and hurts and offends, it takes away from the love bank. And so the generalized feeling, the generalized affection that we have for our mates depends on withdrawals and deposits. All right, now the problem with pornography is that it tends to detract from the love bank. Women require honesty and openness. If men are honest and open about their pornography use, okay, if you keep it secret, you violate honesty and openness. If you talk about it, you risk losing admiration. It's a lose-lose situation here, okay? So you can see on the surface of it how this can damage the affection that mates have for one another. but I'm being honest about my porn addiction. Doesn't that make you respect me more? No, not really. Now, in a nutshell, what I'm going to be talking about are the specific reasons that pornography damages male-female relationships and actually harms sexuality, okay? The expectations of what a satisfying sexual experience, what they should be, they're askew because of pornography. Our culture promotes bad habits that disable our capacity for intimacy in relationships. In other words, we have a maladaptive sexual script, and I'm going to discuss that. And both partners must have realistic sexual expectations and a healthy capacity for intimacy in order for this to work the way God intended. Now, what is the appeal of both pornography and extramarital affairs? Because people fall into them all the time. I mean, both of these are, I mean, I don't know what the percentages are, but they got to be huge. It's got to be over 80%. I don't know, it just feels that way. I'm jaded, I'm a psychiatrist, so what can I say? All right, I see all the bad stuff. All right. So, affairs, casual sex, and pornography, they fulfill the need for sexual fulfillment due to the absence of a willing partner. The excitement of a romantic encounter, that's where the affairs come in. A desire for sexual creativity, get bored with the spouse. A desire for sex without the messiness of commitment. These are all reasons that people turn to pornography and the use of prostitutes. So how is pornography different from prostitution, adultery, and casual sex? Well, it doesn't involve another person, so we talked about that. All right? By using a prostitute or pornography, the men avoid the work that they would have to do in a real marriage relationship. Okay, so they don't have to worry about changing. They don't have to worry about talking. Just go in. I just want to feel a certain way. That's a drug addiction, by the way. I mean, that's how an addict thinks. They don't care about where they buy their drugs. They don't care about who they have to hurt or who they steal from. They just want to feel a certain way. They want to be in control. I feel bad now. I want to do something that's going to make me feel good. I don't care about the future or other people. I care about me right now. And unfortunately, many people use sex in that fashion. So rather than, once again, in a marriage, if you want a mutually satisfying, fulfilling sexual relationship, it requires sacrifice and communication on a regular basis. Okay? And also, the thing is that here's, this picture down here, what I've showed, you got this couple, and they all have all this baggage. So if they don't talk through this stuff and get this baggage unpacked, then it's going to be not a very fulfilling experience, and it makes pornography more attractive. See, in pornography, you don't have to worry about these people that you're fantasizing about. There's no baggage involved. And you go to a prostitute, there's no history, there's no baggage, and so you just jump into it. So why is the allure of pornography so strong? Well, why is the allure of sex so strong? I think many people who have struggled with this ask the question, Lord, why did you make the impulse so ridiculously strong? It would be a lot easier if you had made this easier. I mean, it'd be a lot easier if you hadn't made the allure so powerful. Why does it affect us like this? Well, God knew that we needed certain things to survive. We need food, we need water, and if we're gonna survive as a species, we need to procreate. And so He made hunger and thirst compulsions. He made it so that we would be very uncomfortable without it and very happy if we gave into it. So we need to eat and drink. Now, with regard to procreation, He could have said, be fruitful and multiply. It's up to you. I'm not going to create any incentive or benefit. I just want you to do it. How long do you think our species would have lasted? Okay. The first time Adam and Eve got into a fight, that'd be it. Okay, we're done with that. All right. We tried. I don't want to touch it anymore. Okay. So He had to make it very strong. Now, in addition, as we age, our body changes. Okay? And we don't all stay 25, 30 years old. If sex is going to be continue to be fulfilling, we still have to have desire, even though we become more dysmorphic as our body ages. So by making sexual desire very strong, He wanted to guarantee that people could enjoy it throughout their life. Unfortunately, by ramping up the potency, it spills over into behaviors that He says are not good for you. Okay? All right, now the reward pathway. Why is sex rewarding? There is a little compound called dopamine. It's produced in the ventral tegmental area of the brain. And when dopamine is released at the nucleus accumbens, it causes the sensation of pleasure. All right? The more dopamine at the nucleus accumbens, the greater the sense of pleasure that we have. Not only does dopamine release is increased when we anticipate a pleasurable experience, like anticipating eating a piece of chocolate, you get some of the pleasure up front before you take that first bite. Okay, that motivates you to take the bite, all right? And then you take it, and then dopamine comes out. Now you get the rest of the reward. So 10% up front, 90% when you engage. Sex works that way as well. As you think about it, 10%, and as you do it, the rest of the 90%. Okay? Now this occurs with drives like eating, drinking, and sex. It also occurs with drugs of abuse. Drugs of abuse blast your nucleus accumbens way harder than most normal experiences. So cocaine, heroin, marijuana, even cigarette smoking do that to varying degrees. All right? For example, here we see nicotine, and this is just an arbitrary thing, just to show you that they don't all hit the nucleus accumbens to the same degree. Nicotine gives you a 2, THC maybe a 3, and opiates you up here, and then cocaine and methamphetamine, boom. I mean, you really blast that thing. So it varies. The higher the release, the greater the sense of reward. Now, avoiding street drugs is pretty easy if you don't have experience buying drugs on the street. Okay, and so avoiding cocaine and heroin for most people isn't that difficult. However, avoiding pornography is much more challenging. Imagine if you could just use your cell phone and hit a button and out would pop cocaine, okay, or out would pop heroin. Can you imagine how bad the heroin, you think the heroin problem is now? If you could just get it by pulling it up on your computer or just going to a site on your phone and whoa, whoa, I mean, everybody be dead, man, okay? Everybody would be gone, all right? I mean, if it was that easy. That's unfortunately where we are with pornography. All these things, including sex, causes dopamine release at the nucleus accumbens, and it gives you happy. Now, life is difficult sometimes. Sometimes we're bored, sometimes we're frustrated, sometimes we're anxious, and we have two brains. We have a higher brain and a lower brain. The lower brain, that's your limbic brain, the emotional self, that's the elephant. And the elephant says, I want to feel good and avoid pain. I don't care about nothing else. And the higher brain says, well, we got to look out for ourselves. We need to plan and organize things. So we want to have a better future down the road. We need to think about other people and so forth. And so it tries to guide the elephant. Says, let's not go over here because consequences. And so if it's doing a really strong job, it can sway the elephant into safer pastures. However, when it comes to stimulation at the nucleus accumbens, it's hard for the elephant to say no to that. All right. Now, a few years ago, we discovered this relationship between dopamine and the nucleus accumbens, and somebody came up with the idea that, hey, this is a really cool way to treat pain. If you have people in chronic pain, instead of giving them all these opiate drugs and getting them hooked and everything, let's put an electrode in their brain, in the nucleus accumbens, and give them a button. So they push the button and they get direct stimulation. And so they can give themselves the pleasure of opiates without suppressing respiration. So they can get the pleasure and not risk dying from overdose. And wouldn't that be wonderful? So you have all these dying cancer patients and chronic pain issues, give them a button. And so before you could do that, though, they need to do experiments. And so what they did was they did them on monkeys, and they implanted an electrode in their nucleus accumbens, and they gave them a button. And every time they pushed the button, they could get relief from their pain. And they wanted to see how they would react if they had access to that button. So what did they discover? Well, the button worked. They pushed it, and the monkey was like, whoa, yeah, whoa, this is good, all right? Unfortunately, the study was not a success because 100% of the monkeys died, okay? Why did they die? Because they stopped eating, they stopped drinking, and they stopped sleeping. They stayed up 24/7 doing this. Okay? They pleasured themselves to death. All right? That's the potency of the nucleus accumbens. And you see, when we have control over, that's why drugs of abuse and pornography can be very alluring, because that dopamine system. Okay? So dopamine is released at sexual contemplation and sexual engagement. It basically the elephant part of our brain doesn't handle pleasure on demand very well. Okay? Now, with pornography and adultery and stuff, there are several other pathways that aren't present in normal male-female marital relationships. Okay? One of those pathways is excitement. Okay? Norepinephrine is produced in an area of the brain called the locus coeruleus, and it is responsible for motivation and excitement. Okay? And so, like, for example, when you order something on Amazon, and you're thinking about when it's coming, and so the excitement is building and building and building, and it climaxes when you come home and you see the package on your porch, and it's like, oh, it's here! And then you open it up and you pull it out and you look at it, and the excitement goes, gotta buy something else now, okay? But that's excitement. It's anticipatory. It's part of the motivation thing. Now, people also get excited by, in anticipation of good things, but also people get thrills are a form. Some people who really like excitement, they do things like they go hunting for lions, and they jump out of airplanes, and they jump out of helicopters on top of mountains and go skiing and stuff like that. So they put their lives at risk, but the thrill of putting themselves at risk gives them a happy. Not everybody has that, okay? But there are a number of people that really get off on that. And so when people take risk, they get that kind of excitement as well. So when you're doing something clandestine, when you're doing something that could have negative consequences if people find out, that also gives you a sense of excitement. Okay? Pornography is something consumed in the dark by most folks because they don't want the embarrassment of getting caught. And so there is that level of excitement associated. Not supposed to be, but I'm doing it anyway. Woo! This is something that's kind of wrong. And so that contributes to the pleasure of it. The taboo factor, social taboo. Novelty is another form of pleasure. If you see a kitten, you look once. You see a kitten with two heads, then you go, whoa, that's different. Okay, your brain is programmed to pay attention to new things. That's why humans invent things. That's why we have a civilization that has advanced, because we get excited by learning new things. When you learn something new, that's a separate pleasure pathway. Dopamine is released in the area of the brain, in the insular cortex. And the insular cortex is for novelty. I mean, it does a few things, but when dopamine is released in the insular cortex, you get pleasure from something new, novelty. Now, pornography involves all three of these, because when it comes to novelty, how many internet porn videos are there on the internet? Anybody have any idea? Like several trillion. I mean, it's like how many atoms are there in a glass of water? I mean, there's so many of them, right? And so that's a lot. I mean, the novelty that people can watch so many different things, even though it's kind of the same things over and over, but there's variety. And so the novelty is blown away when people look at internet pornography. About 10 to 30% of the whole internet is made up of pornography. That's a lot of new content to look at. That's a lot of novelty. So according to the contemporary pornographic sexual script, sex should contain not only the dopamine stimulation from the actual act of sex and the anticipation of sex, but also novelty and taboo. So we have novelty and the excitement factors all there, and that leads to sexual hyperstimulation. So what it should not contain, physical imperfections and relationship problems. People get used to associating sex. It's like in a real relationship, you got problems to talk through and work out. You don't have that when looking at pornography. Okay, and in pornography, those people are airbrushed and photoshopped. You don't see all the blemishes and problems. Stuff. That stuff is weeded out. And so when real people have baggage, and real people have physical imperfections. So the sexual script is being written for something that doesn't exist. Expectations are for something that is unattainable. All right, pornography and adultery stimulate all three reward pathways in a way that normal sexuality does not. It overwhelms the reward system, so that with the reward system on pornography, it's like the equivalent of heroin, and a real spouse is closer to a Tylenol 3. What happens if you've been on heroin and somebody hands you a couple Tylenol 3 and says, get over the heroin, here you go? You go into withdrawal, okay? It's not going to be very satisfying. And this affects expectations. In pornography, men learn, hey, it doesn't matter that I have horrible character traits. It doesn't matter that I offend everybody and that I can't keep a friend because, all that matters is, hey, I want sex, you do, and I should be able to find somebody that just, regardless of my baggage, will just want to have sex with me, okay? That's a bad script that is going to leave them empty. All right? The moral script are normal principles of contact. What is normal behavior? All right? The pornographic script represents sex as a superhighway with multiple on-ramps. In the pornographic world, sex is presented as what we call a high entropy endeavor. What is entropy? Entropy is a state of chaos. The higher the entropy, the more disorder. Okay? Living systems are low entropy. Your body is low entropy because if you vary your sodium concentrations and potassium, if you vary the carbon, there's so many variables. If you alter those variables even a little, we call it pathology, and if you keep altering them, it's called death, and you're no longer viable. So decay is a high entropy state because you can see multiple decayed bodies and recognize that, hey, that's a decayed body. But living bodies have specific parameters. Life is low entropy, death is high entropy. Okay? We see here a broken egg. How many different pictures of broken eggs can you see and still recognize it as a broken egg? It's practically infinite. Okay? There are many, many ways to interpret a broken egg. That's high entropy. But a whole egg, a viable egg, an egg that can produce life is low entropy. They might have different shapes, might be oblong or circular, might be different colors, might be big or small. But other than that, a whole egg, there's a very few configurations that you will see that you will say, that's still an egg. Okay? Low entropy. Pornography presents sex as high entropy. It can be between man and woman, man and man, woman and woman, man and animal, man and wood objects, steel, wood, whatever, man and potatoes. I mean, basically, it's like anything can be sexualized, anything. And so sex is presented as a high entropy endeavor. Massive amounts of novelty, okay? So now the biblical presentation of normal sexuality is low entropy. So many of those things that are accepted as normality in the porn world are they're verboten within biblical Christianity. Pornography and prostitutes are on-demand outlets for sexual needs. Porn exposure reprograms the mind of the user for what they expect from their sexual partners. Now, can you imagine somebody growing up consuming this material? And again, I know I focus on males a lot because boys have had more of a problem and still do, but women are catching up. I mean, they're actually producing porn specifically directed at women, and I've had several women who are really struggling with this as well, okay? And when it alters how dating couples see each other. I am shocked at the number of people from solid, biblically based churches who come in and they're dating and they're talking about their sex life like it's just normal. And I'm thinking, okay, when did that whole fornication thing end? Because I didn't get the memo. But it's in the church so much so that it's become normalized, and it's kind of breathtaking how quickly this has happened. Neurons that fire together, wire together. If you practice the same thing over and over again, it becomes neurologic. It becomes a habit that is ingrained. And that's the problem. And people don't just look at pornography once. They look at it again and again. And every time you activate those circuits, it becomes easier and easier for the brain to flow in that direction. Our sexual experience was designed to be narrow, monogamous, with slow, with few on-ramps, okay? So not multiple partners. It was designed to be between two people who spend a lifetime working on the relationship and rewarding each other in bed. Marriages don't do well if you're used to pornography and taboo, it's got to be secret and dirty. Once you get married, that's gone. You ever wonder why so many people live together for 5 to 7 years and they get married and they're divorced within 2 years? Okay. When you take away the taboo factor, that's some excitement. It's like, we're not supposed to be doing now that we're supposed to be, it's not fun anymore. The taboo factor. All right? And novelty, oh boy, if you're used to lots of novelty and you're stuck with one person, you're not allowed to switch partners and do all these crazy things in actual relationships. And so that limits the amount of novelty, hence the boredom that will befall them. So sex hurts relationships tremendously. Porn addiction results in withdrawal from the spouse's affection bank. Okay, we talked about that earlier. Affectionate displays, honesty and openness, admiration, even sexual fulfillment. These are casualties when one or more partner has issues with internet pornography. Today, we're seeing an epidemic of a new diagnoses, two of them, porn-induced erectile dysfunction and porn-induced hypoactive sexual desire. These are real things, and we're seeing them a lot. I've been treating them for years, and they are on the rise. People come in, and they don't know. I had one guy came in, and his wife brought him in because she felt there were some serious psychiatric problems. But she got him in, telling him, if you come in, he can write you that Viagra you've been asking for, okay? Now, I was a little nervous about telling him no, because he brought his gun to class, okay, and it was sitting right there. And he wanted Viagra, and so when I told him no, he started doing, you know, if you take the other medicine, maybe I'll consider it. But the thing is, the number one reason for impotence, it's not diabetes, it's pornography. For why? Because of what I just told you. Okay, if you're used to that hyperstimulation and you try to have sex with a normal, actual human, in reality, it's very difficult to get excited about that. And so we see this porn-induced erectile dysfunction and pornography-induced low libido for the spouse. Again, it's like being on OxyContin and somebody switches you to a Tylenol 3. All right? So it's not just that the only downside to porn use is shame for believers. The consequences to everybody is that it damages actual sexual relationships. It doesn't make people more responsive to each other. It actually has the opposite effect. It turns people off to actual humans. All right? Consequences of porn-related sexual superstimulation. It results in a mutation of the sexual script that God intended. It's completely self-focused as opposed to other-focused. Has nothing to do with procreation. It makes withdrawals to each other's love banks instead of deposits. Hence, it pulls people farther apart. Like drugs of abuse, it leads to increasing emptiness. You know, what emptiness occurs when you do something to feel better and to feel whole and complete, and it fails you, then you end up even more empty. Okay? And what happens, though, like drugs of abuse, people go back to the hair of the dog that bit them, and they keep using it and again, and it leaves them emptier. And unfortunately, some people try to get that stimulation so much that they make the types of things that they look at become more illicit, more out there, because they're going after that novelty, and they find themselves in places that they never intended to go, but they get there slowly. And ultimately, it damages the libido system that it pretends to celebrate. Okay? Healthy sex is a low entropy endeavor, and when we make it high entropy, you break it. It's breakable. Okay? And it's sensitive. So it's like taking your computer and using it as a golf club. Okay? It's not going to last very long if you misuse it. All right. Any questions?
About the ability to turn it around when you stop.
Oh, I thought you guys were going to talk about that.
Well, yeah.
All right, yeah, turning it around involves, step one, recognizing that it's a problem. You know, you have to see it as a problem, that this is what it's doing to me, and take it seriously. And then, like when somebody has an alcohol problem, and I say, if you're really serious, I've got an injection, naltrexone. I can give this to you once a month, and it will block your ability to get drunk for the next month. If you're willing to take this, this tells me that you're serious. If you're serious about your internet pornography usage, then on your phone and on your computer, I would recommend spending the time investing in internet blocking agents to help monitor you so that you no longer have that privacy, so that you take that away. Because your elephant, it remembers where to go to get pleasure. And so you use while you're in your right mind, use your higher brain to start protecting yourself. Okay, that would be step one.
But like long term, can you reset this
Oh yeah, it can be reset, of course. Yes, yes. You can come back from it. Yeah, yeah. The brain is plastic. In fact, yeah, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing if we didn't believe that. But yeah, neuroplasticity is a real thing, but it starts with doing different things, new habits, okay, in the other direction. Okay?
What about,
Yeah.
I work with teenagers
Mm-hmm.
where their higher brain is not.
Right. Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah.
So how do you begin to make like young people aware of the consequences and the damaging life? Because I could tell them this, but they would be like, okay, whatever.
Well, I mean, all you can do is tell them this. I mean, there's really, I mean, it's like I deal with this issue not just here, but also with marijuana usage. Okay, because basically the truth isn't out there. I mean, they don't understand that under the age of 25, this is literally going to stop their brain from maturing. They're literally, it's going to cost them millions of dollars because their higher brain functions are necessary for good jobs, and they don't know that. And so I do the education. You know, a lot of them respond to the education. However, there are some that say, I don't care, you're just one expert. There are plenty of people on YouTube that disagree with you, okay? And they choose to go with that. There's nothing you can do. It's like once you have a teenager, you have to wait for their brain to mature, but some of them, if you explain to them that they're literally affecting their future sexuality, that this is really going to damage their ability to enjoy sex with a, they will experience that. And then what you want to do is plant those seeds so that when they experience this emptiness and the difficulties in real relationships, and maybe they'll come around. But we can't make them see this stuff. You know, I mean, we can show them the studies and everything, because I mean, this is now recognized in the secular literature. Okay, now we don't have a DSM-5 diagnosis because the people in charge of the DSM-5, they put the sexologist in charge, and so we did have hypersexual. That was going to be a diagnosis, but the sexologists, these guys are a little bit, they're warped in the other way, and so they don't see any expression of sexuality as wrong, and therefore they don't believe there's such a thing, and so they left it out of the DSM-5. But people who actually treat people, yeah, this is a real thing. Yeah. But yeah, I'm sorry, I wish I had better news, but when you're asking about teenagers and kids, please, you're talking to the wrong guy, man. My success rate in that group is not real good. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr.